All right, so our last concept video will be guidelines for improving nonverbal communication. And for this video, we're going to be looking at how we can improve sending nonverbal messages, interpreting nonverbal messages, and then after that, we'll do a quick exam prep, analysis, and then a reflect question. So the first way we can improve nonverbals is looking at how we send them. So I think it's really easy for us to say, well, that's just how my face looks, or that's just how I am. And I think that's an easy way out for not working on our nonverbal communication. So while that's okay, that's your prerogative to do that. But if you really want to be an effective communicator, if you really want to meet your communication goals, if you want people to respect your communication, to view you positively, then one of the things we need to think about is we need to monitor how we send nonverbal messages. So I'm going to consciously think about how does my body, voice, use of space, time, appearance, all of these things, how are they communicating messages? Like, what are they saying about me? That's just like for someone that wants a job, you should probably dress well for that job interview because they are looking at appearance. Do you seem like you care? It's not judging you, because I think some people might say, well, they shouldn't be judging me how I look. No, they're looking at, do you care about this position? Does this seem like something that you truly desire? Are you professional? Can I trust you in this position? Like part of that we don't realize is that an employer has to trust us. Especially like when I wanted this position, I wanted it so bad that I thought so much about, okay, how am I going to come across in this interview, because I knew multiple people were applying for it. So I thought about what clothing choices I wore, how I dress, how I wore my hair, what kind of jewelry I put on. And it wasn't to put on anything to be fake, because it was all stuff that I had and how I wanted to look. But I really thought about, how is this going to be perceived by somebody else? And so I paid lots of attention to it. So I want you to kind of take on that thought of like, okay, monitoring myself isn't me not being myself. This is me being my best self in this situation. Okay, then you want to align. So once you monitor how you're using your nonverbal communication, you then want to actually align your communication to meet your goals. Like for the interview example for myself, I thought, okay, what do I want to do? I want to show them that I'm an empathetic teacher, that I'm really caring, that I'm outgoing, that I'm a hard worker, that, I know my stuff. But I thought about those things and said, okay, how can I do that? So I thought about what color choice I was going to wear. I thought about, I want to seem professional. So, I was very modest. I thought about like how long my skirt was, how, like if I was showing anything up here. So I paid attention to that, and I aligned all my verbal messages. I know I'm just talking about appearance, but there's more than that. But I aligned all of those things to my goal. Once I was in that interview, I really did pay attention to how are my facial expressions, my voice tone, my body language, how is that being perceived by them? Do they see me as a kind person? Because that's what I want them to see. And then adapt. So adapting means that you adapt to the situation. For myself, once I got in that room and I kind of saw where everyone was sitting, what everyone was thinking, I thought a lot about, okay, how do I shift? How can I learn? And I thought about how everybody was in the room. I could tell they were a little bit more relaxed group of people. So I kind of didn't tone down all of my professionalism, but I tried to seem a little bit more just approachable and kind and easygoing. And so I adapted my messages once I was in the context and I could see the situation and saw all the context going on. So then, and then reduce. So you want to reduce or eliminate distracting nonverbals. So one thing that I did to reduce nonverbal communication in this situation was I didn't wear any bracelets, because I tend to mess with them if I have them. So I didn't want to do any I didn't want to have any adapters that communicated the wrong message. So I just took everything off. I wore very small earrings so they wouldn't move around, and I put my hair in a ponytail so I wouldn't mess with it. So all of those things were to reduce any reduce any nonverbals that might be distracting for them or might look like I'm nervous. So you want to try to think about that in all situations, and especially in situations that are a bit more formal. So the last way that we can improve nonverbals is by thinking about how we interpret them. So the first thing we want to do is remember. Remember that the same nonverbal messages aren't the same for all people. So if someone does something that is slightly offensive or annoying to you, remember that they may not realize that it is. I kind of think about whenever I was on the plane, I think I gave that as an example earlier, and there was a person that was just not paying attention to acoustic space behind me. I was getting really frustrated, and this person just doesn't care, and blah, blah, blah. You know, and I looked at my husband and was like, oh, this is so annoying. And he was like, oh, I don't know. I mean, maybe they just don't realize that some people, you know, don't like whenever you're loud. I mean, they may just not know. And it was just a reminder for me, like, oh yeah, they may not really be trying to annoy me or being rude. They just, and from where they're from or their culture, it's not a big deal. And then consider. So consider all the context of the situation. If you don't remember anything from this video, remember that context is everything. Okay, context is everything when it comes to nonverbal messages. You have to think about, what is the physical setting here? What is the social context, the psychological context, the historical context, the cultural context? All of these things will help you better interpret the nonverbal messages that somebody is sending to you. Which then leads us to attention. Pay attention to the multiple nonverbal messages being sent and the relationship to the verbal message. So it's really important that we understand that nonverbal communication is multifaceted and it works simultaneously. Meaning it's not just one, we can't just pay attention to one thing, like how someone's body is faced or just their face or just their voice. We have to kind of think about it all together. But again, this has a lot to do with what kind of situation are you in? Like, are you face to face, or, you know, is the channel a mediated channel? And if so, how rich is that mediated channel? And if you don't know what I'm talking about with mediated channel, I mean, like, are you FaceTiming? Are you using Teams or Zoom? Are you on the phone, email, text? All those things, you want to pay attention to all the nonverbals that you possibly can get and recognize that it's multifaceted. And then perception check. So one of the things I think is really hard for us is sometimes we want to jump to the worst possible reasoning for things. So especially when it comes to, like, if you don't know why someone did something, or you take somebody's nonverbal communication, you think it's for this reason, and you're getting really upset about it. It's good to perception check. Like, think about all aspects of the situation, also give the benefit of the doubt. This is also where it's kind of hard, you know, like we kind of play the victim sometimes. All of us, I'm not pointing fingers. But we want to think about all aspects of the situation. Like, for myself, whenever I get a text from like my mom, or not really, my mom's not one really, but okay, so like my mother-in-law doesn't use a whole lot of exclamation points or emojis or anything. And so at first I used to get really upset when she would text me and it would just be like, that's fine, period. You know, I would think she hates me. But then I realized over time, that she just doesn't realize how much I need that nonverbal affirmation. And so I was able to kind of perception check that. But if you're having issues, like making sure you really can't tell what they want their message to be, it's always okay to ask questions. Asking questions is a form of direct communication, and it's very healthy and good. Just make sure that when you're doing it, you're using appropriate nonverbals as well. Like, you don't want to be like, well, what did that mean? Right? Like, that's going to put someone on the defense. But if you're just like, okay, well, I noticed you said this. I can't really tell which way you meant by that. Did you mean this or did you mean this? And then they'll tell you and you'll be like, okay, cool, moving on. So I think asking questions or asking for clarity is something we don't always do, and it's actually something that could really help, especially if it's done well. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, pause the video and answer the following questions. When you're ready, press play. Okay, here are our answers. Go ahead and pause the video to check your work, and when you're ready, move on to the last slide, the reflection question. What one step will you put into practice this week to improve your nonverbal communication competency?